Again, Kendopolis, this is Dr. Kendo, and I'm here with another Kendo-Crossover episode for Scribblenauts Unlimited, the object editor commentaries. Of course, just to get this out of the way, normally every single week we create whatever is most popular, most requested by the most amount of different viewers. This week I went with the Kendo-Crossover. This has been highly requested. Oh my gosh, it's been crazy, but not this particular week, just over the course of several months. And so we started off with the dude as the source object, just put down the leg of an emo for the first character in what we're doing today. The Kendo-Crossover episode for today is POKENDO. I went with POKENDO instead of Kendomon because what if we do like Digimon or something? Plus Pokemon, POKENDO, it goes well together. Wafer board, we just put down now after those emo legs, the wafer board. Basically, we're creating Kendo version of Ash right here. It is going to be me. I'm not going to be the only character in this series, though. We've got lots of other Kendo family members and whatnot for this episode, but the wafer board was part of the jacket and stuff that Ash is usually wearing right here, that the Kendo Ash is going to wear, and the letter I for the other side, but then we've got a minus sign right now, the part where his jacket can kind of connect right there. We're actually going to make the little buttons for that wart, so that's why I've typed in wart right here. Paint that yellow. We're going to use another one, of course, for the letter I side on that side. Be to our right. So then we got a dunce cap coming up next. The dunce cap is this white part, basically it looks like the collar and stuff on the jacket, those flaps coming down, and Micah, this is the head for Dr. Kendo. So if you recall creating Dr. Kendo's avatar and stuff, I did that in episode 144. We used that head from Micah, one of the 5th cell members, and so now I'm gonna go with a headband. You know, Ash usually in the show would wear a hat, but this is the Kendo version of Ash, and something I never wear hats, and of course my hair looks like that with Micah's, where I have some hair going up in the front. And so one example of kind of doing this instead of wearing a hat is that I would have a headband on, sort of like the example I was going to use was my Team Skull cosplay with StephOfAnime at PAX East this year. You could see that on my Twitter pages and stuff, and I might show a picture of that here on this episode, just so you guys know what I'm talking about, but I did a cosplay with her of Team Skull and some other people there, and so instead of having the full skull cap, I actually just did a headband and painted the little skull eyes on that headband, and so that's what we've kind of done here for the Ash version of me right here. And we also took Tony, the arms of Tony, that's one of Maxwell's brothers. We took the back arm for both of the arms for the Ash Kendo here, and we've got a mahi-mahi, all one word. It's a fish. Basically we can grab that kind of fin that's down near the head but at the bottom. We used a fingernail, painted that white twice for the white part of his eyes right here, and then we're going with a crane, of course the bird crane, for the middle neck piece of that crane. I'm gonna paint it blue. You know, Ash doesn't exactly have blue eyes, but of course this is the Kendo version, and so with that, I'm giving myself the blue eyes that I have in real life, of course. And so we also took a wart to paint that white and put that over that kind of iris colored part of his eyes, because just to have a little bit of shine and details and stuff. Scorpion, the upper middle tail piece, is going to be for the nose, of course, as you probably just noticed. Hemisphere is what I've used after that. If you're in Scribblenauts Unlimited, you can just grab it from the geometry or shapes library, but if you're in Scribblenauts Unmasked, please remember you gotta type in hemisphere. We're gonna go with kind of the last finishing piece here, which will be the tail end of a baboon, but it's not the far end, I guess I should say, so it's the tail piece that connects the body and the tail together. It's that piece right there for this almost slightly checkmark-like logo on the Ash Kendo headband there. We're in the properties editor here. Normally I read background information and fun facts about the characters that we're creating and stuff, but for these Kendo-Crossover videos, there's not really like background information per se, but just as an example of some other ones that we've done, like we did 5 Nights at Kendo's to start it all off. There's a part 1 and part 2 of that. There's Kendo Tale, like Undertale. We also have Kendo Universe, and so that's like Steven Universe with Dr. Kendo and Mrs. Kendo, and Apple and Tui were in that one. Those are my dogs. And so we are going to add a new Kendo member for the Kendo family and everything in this very episode, so you'll see that towards the end. I won't spoil that just yet, but I just did some basic scripting in essence that this Kendo Ash, when he gets attacked, it will basically create a black retriever. So the dog retriever, that's the dog that looks kind of, without any edits, most like my dog Apple. And so I thought that that might be just kind of an interesting touch. We will be creating an Apple Kendo Pokemon creation pretty soon, but I just wanted that scripting for the Ash Kendo, like as if he's using a Pokemon or something every time he gets attacked or whatever. So we've got Emily HALPIN right here, and you can tell that we're doing some various coloration right now that hopefully, if you noticed, the astute viewers and stuff would notice that we did yellow on the top and orange in the middle, and then this kind of light blue on the bottom. That's to match Misty's colors, because my beautiful wife, Mrs. Kendo, is going to be our Misty creation here. So this is Misty, Mrs. Kendo. Fingernails for the eyes. Emily Halpin can be for most of the body and the head and all that. It is really nice to have that fifth cell member kind of do most of what we need for all the stamps. So now we're just adding in all these other details here and colors. So taking that middle neck piece of the crane again, because the fingernail white part of the eyes is going to be the main part, with the crane once again to be the iris, you know, the colored part there in her eyes. We took a scorpion that this time the kind of middle bottom tail piece for Mrs. Kendo's nose there for the Misty version. Of course, the hemisphere, once again, you probably noticed, was the mouth being open, the big smile like that. We used a pimple this time for the shine in her eyes, and that was just to deviate from the wart. You can do either one, really. They look very similar. Whisker we're going to use for the eyelashes. If you typed in eyelash in this game, you would notice that you wouldn't actually get an eyelash, you would get an eye, and so whisker is a good stamp that is synonymous with that. I'm going to use a chicken nugget to be a tongue there in the mouth. I think it's a pretty nice detail. We have enough stamp space, of course, for it as well. Misty, if you remember from the show, you know, she actually had some long, skinny legs, but she had these big shoes on, and so instead of orange hair like Misty has in the show, we're giving Mrs. Kendo her typical brunette hair that she has, but I'm kind of using the orange colors here to make reference to all that. You know, there's all this orange, like for instance on that headband with the bow there on Emily Halpin's head, which is Mrs. Kendo's head, of course, matches really well actually. Mrs. Kendo used to always wear like bows and headbands and stuff like that. She kind of does now, but not super often, like at work and stuff like that, now that we're in the adult world. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing for Mrs. Kendo. Like Dr. Kendo, we always use, you know, mica head, red shoes, you know, that was sort of my deal, like the red Converse. I'm always wearing t-shirts. Well, Mrs. Kendo's sort of thing we can do as like hair bands and bows, but she also wears dresses a lot, and so that was actually the whole purpose of using Emily Halpin as well, because Misty, of course, doesn't wear a dress like that, but Mrs. Kendo does, and so we used octopus tentacles for the suspenders there, as well as a nursery fish side fin for the bottom of those suspenders where they're connecting to the middle of the dress, just for some decoration, design, reference to Misty. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. It's a Mrs. Kendo version of Misty. It's not supposed to look exactly like, these are all not supposed to look exactly like the character that they are based off of or inspired by. That's what these Kendo crossover things are. You know, it's not supposed to be the exact replica, so it never ceases to amaze me that people still want to say like you forgot some detail that's on the original character or whatever, when that's not the intention. The intention is to make a somewhat original design, of course, but based off of and inspired by the original character. And so one of the subscribers that was advocating for a Kendo crossover with Pokemon, well, his username is Gengar111, and so my friend, thank you so much for asking for this over the months and whatnot. I hope that you didn't have to wait too long for a Pokemon Kendo crossover, but you were asking for a Gengar version. You know, there's tons of Pokemon, obviously. Everybody knows that if you know anything about Pokemon. There are a ton of them, and so it's like, who could we choose to make a Kendo version out of any of these Pokemon? Well, Gengar is one of my choices because, again, in honor of Gengar111 on YouTube, thank you so much for your support, but thank you to everybody. This was a highly requested thing. It's just that Gengar111 was commenting about it a lot. I wanted to be sure that you were noticed. So we have the design mostly done. I mean, it's basically my Dr. Kendo avatar, like you can see on episode 144, where we also created John Cena, but we used like Mora arms I just showed you, hemispheres for the eyes right there, the tooth fairy, the female tooth fairy, back arm is for the mouth with jellyfish upper tentacle body pieces to be the lines there for the teeth, and dunce cap right there was the horns for on top of the head, and I did give it kind of crazy colors and wanted the hair to be a little bit different, so we gave it kind of a color or texture pattern right there, as well as the spikes on his back, which is Irish moss, and so the Kendo Gengar Pokemon here does have those spikes going down there. I just wanted you guys to know that that was included. The spikes are one of my favorite things about Gengar the Pokemon, so I wanted them to be included on a Kendo version, and Gengar, of course, normally does not have a nose, but this is the, again, Kendo version, and a fang was the tail. So hopefully that gets you everything you needed. We're gonna start off with the Retriever. As I said before, a Retriever is a very close kind of dog in Scribblenauts to Apple Kendo, and so that is the first dog that I've gotten with Mrs. Kendo before. Apple was actually abandoned in an apartment complex. It was our first apartment that we rented together and lived in for for a year, but some people very early on in our stay, they had abandoned Apple on the street, and he basically found me, I would say. I was coming home one day with some breakfast tacos, and he was just basically like, hey, dude, I'm your dog now. Sniffed his way right into my heart. At 4 months old, he was just a little pup. Now he's basically 5 years old. Now, also for this special POKENDO episode, I have asked my Patreon supporters, of course, at patreon.com/drkendo. That's patreon.com/drkendo. These are people who have supported me now for quite a long time, and it's really something that takes the channel to where I've been able to take it to. You know, you guys are making it possible there on Patreon. You're really going above and beyond for Kendopolis here, and so I wanted you to be rewarded in an even more extra way aside from your Patreon rewards is here. I had you guys suggest Pokemon that my dogs could be transformed into, or other characters in this episode, and so I'd like to credit Sentry for the idea of transforming Apple, basically, into the Pokemon Zekrom. We started off with the Retriever as the source object. I hope that you've been seeing the stamps and stuff that have been going by. We got a Stegosaurus right here, the back leg for that to be the back feet, basically the bottom leg parts for our Zekrom Apple here. This looks incredible. I love this design, so thank you, JE. That was a great idea. We used the mola. The body of the mola was not only for these kind of covers there on the forearm of Zekrom, but here it's for Apple's front paws and the bottom, basically, legs of the front legs. And that does not make sense. The front legs, the bottom parts. And so the mola body was also for the 3 little prong protrusion things there on Zekrom, the tail of Zekrom, but also for our Apple transformation here. I went with Cupid wings. Now, normally the wings would be much bigger, but that would kind of cover up a lot of the details here, and we want it to be dog-sized. So I did scale things down. I hope that you guys like that design, because that was a really fun one for me to figure out and create right there. And so I do have another dog, of course, that would be Tui, and so Tui Kendo was basically 2 years after we had Apple. My wife was able to save Tui. Tui had his own kind of plight. He was living on the streets and stuff, and animal control picked him up in my wife's hometown, and he had parvo. He survived. It was very, very low chances of him surviving, but he did survive, and my wife was volunteering at the animal shelter when she was at her hometown for the summer. We were apart from each other for a little while, still visiting, of course. But she adopted Tui in that time because she just kind of, was, of course, volunteering over there and got to be with Tui, who was actually kind of codenamed, I guess, Forrest. They called him Forrest with 2 R's at this place. So his original name, I guess, was Forrest. We made that his middle name now that we have called him Tui, of course. And he is Tui because he is Apple 2. So he's like the second little mini Apple, and his name is Tui. And so I'll go ahead and credit StephOfAnime for the next Patreon supporter recommendation. I said, hey, tell me a random Pokemon's name, go. And she said, Gumi. So we've got Tui Gumi, which is gonna be Tumi. Isn't that awesome? And so I thought we could make the Tui Gumi have no legs and just sort of slither around or just sort of slide around. But I thought it would be actually much better if we made Tui look like he was kind of wearing this Gumi costume, but it was like, suspend your belief and basically make it a part of him. So that's why we have all those kind of lavender colors on there and the darker colored veils down below on his legs, so it's like he's got Gumi legs, but since he's got 4 legs, he's got the bottom section of Gumi on all of those legs. And so just to break up the Patreon stuff right here, this was actually another thing. I think this was pretty highly requested when anybody was on YouTube talking about a Kendomon or Pokendo crossover. They said, we need a Mimikyu version of Kendo, and so that would be MIMIKENDO. I have created Mimikyu in another episode, and hopefully you can see that on my channel to kind of get the main design for this Mimikyu here. But since I wear red shoes and that's sort of my Kendo thing, along with the mica head right there, we do have the mica head, but I have made the cheeks very red like that, as well as the tail for Mimikyu right here. And we still have all the pieces otherwise, except for I did replace those cheeks. Instead of pine cones like I did for my Mimikyu creation, I have used a snail. If you just type in snail, you can grab that shell part only for the snail. And so that is what I've done there. And so this is where we're gonna get our last Patreon suggestion, because the third Patreon supporter on patreon.com/drkendo is Jomo Do. And so I also asked her, I said, random Pokemon name, go. And she was like, immediately, Dino. You know, the Pokemon Dino. And so we're actually gonna make a new Kendo family character included in all of these Kendo crossovers right now in this episode in particular. and so that's going to be Father Kendo. You guys probably saw my behind the scenes episode for Scribblenauts Unlimited where Father Kendo was sort of revealed and what he looks like and everything, and so Father Kendo is going to be a Father KENDEINO. So I think for the purposes here of what Father Kendo's kind of thing is going to be, you know, like I have the spiky looking hair and the red shoes, my wife has the bows and the hair bands. Well, Father Kendo pretty much always has a watch on, and so we gave him a watch right there on the left hand. It would be his left, it's to our right. And Father Kendo also has gray hair. He's almost always wearing sunglasses, but we're actually not going to see the eyes or much of the face because if you recall the Pokemon Dino, it's got all of that hair and stuff covering where the eyes would be. And so we went with Chow, one of the 5th cell members, for the head shape, the main head and hair, but we are again going to cover up the eyes with some hair, and so we'll get to that in a second. But Father Kendo also has a goatee kind of like I do. His is not as long, I guess, and noticeable, so we just used a toothpick for the goatee here, whereas on the Ash version of Kendo, I used a road hump for the goatee. And another thing, Father Kendo doesn't really do this anymore, but he actually used to have these just terrible orange Crocs, you know, the shoes Crocs with the little holes in them and they look funky. Well, he used to wear orange ones. They were like bright orange and stuff. I think he's gotten rid of those, or he at least does not wear them anymore, but I'm gonna make that kind of his thing, that he has orange shoes, and so we gave it a little color pattern there that like looks like it has some holes in it, and so that'll be sort of like his thing here if we create him in any future episodes as well. And so we just did a nose for the nose. As you probably saw, we used Tiger Shark, the fin that's at the bottom and in the back. We used that for the main kind of hair going over the eyes and over the face, and there's also a shark fin, just a regular shark, and the bottom fin, back fin for that. Golem shoulder piece. This is the other thing actually I forgot to mention. He also wears a lot of t-shirts and long sleeve t-shirts, and he always gets ones with a pocket in them. They're a little bit harder to find nowadays. I don't think a lot of people do that, but Father Kendo's style is having a pocket t-shirt, and so I used a golem shoulder piece for the pocket there. And so I figured people would comment if I didn't have a Brock version and everything, so I just made me basically be Brock. This looks a heck of a lot like regular Brock, but I gave it a faux hawk right there with a golden egg as kind of the main shape of the head because we did have a troglodyte head in the back for that kind of spiky Brock hair. And I am blonde, but I made it sort of like a dark, dirty blonde right here for Brock specifically. And so otherwise, I'll try to have text that explains what all of these stamps are. It was a bread helmet man as the torso over the source torso. And again, the faux hawk was sort of like for my hair, you know, the slick up front hair, the hairs in the front that go up. So we'll put some of the characters through the test in battle, as well as some of the scripting and whatnot, like for the Ash version of me. And so he's actually trying to run away from this devil character right here, but that was just proof, I guess, of the script right there for whenever the Ash Kendo gets attacked, it will spawn this dog that I did shadowy because that's a little bit darker than if you do black for the retriever dog right there. And unfortunately, the devil just completely like whooped up that dog. You know, the dog defaults in Scribblenauts, they don't have a lot of HP or anything like that, and that devil definitely has more power than just a regular human character does. And so then I use this, I've also got my avatar for this episode basically as a Pikachu version of Kendo, so that's just my avatar with all of my little like Pikachu designs. You know, I also created Pikachu back, that was all the way in episode 17, so you can see a lot of that design in that episode with a few additions, and also made it Kendo-fied for my avatar for this episode. And so I did a stun gun on the devil so that I could have some kind of electricity attack. But here we can put our Gengar version of Kendo, as well as the Mimikyu. They're gonna take on one of my past creations, which is the Lego Batman here, and Lego Batman is just whooping up, I think, because I don't see him taking much damage. So we're gonna fast forward through this after the battle has kind of gone on for a little while, because otherwise we would just be sitting here for a long time watching them duke it out kind of in the same format. And unfortunately, well, unfortunately for Pokemon fans, I should say, or Pokendo fans, it looks like Lego Batman has taken both of those characters down. That's cool, I guess. The Lego Batman creation was pretty awesome. So who's left? We've also got our Ken dogs here, and so that's going to be Zekrom Apple and Toomey, the Goomy Tui, going up against another past creation, which is the Nekaluga Battle Cats character. It's just getting whooped up on both sides, except for sometimes this is something that happens when you have like a ranged and non-ranged character working together in battle. If they're not on opposite sides of the character that they're fighting, you saw it right there. The Tui basically shot the apple on accident. You know, it was trying to hit the Nekaluga, but the apple's in the way because Scribblenauts is only on this one plane of vision. You know, it's just 2D side-scrolling, and that was crazy. The Nekaluga just basically punched Apple off of the cliff right there that they were fighting on for that grotto. And so, of course, now that they've both defeated the Nekaluga, it looks like they're both attacking each other because of those Scribblenauts fighting mishaps. But okay, this was a super fun episode for me. I just hope that it was as fun for you, or maybe even more fun, just to see all of these come together. Nothing is wrong here. These are inspired by, they're not the exact Pokemon creations, so you've got to know that if you're gonna try to comment saying that something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. This is POKENDO. But now I really want your attention. This is a major announcement. We need some kind of like music or sound effect for this. Hold on, let me press this right here. Yes, major announcement. I am going to be live streaming with my wife on both Twitch and YouTube simultaneously. We're gonna dual stream. Basically, this is gonna be another question and answer live stream. I know that a lot of people did participate last summer when I did that last July, and it was just me by myself. But my wife and I are gonna make the announcement, or a bigger announcement basically, when we get to the live stream, and then take probably about an hour or so to answer you guys' questions. It'll be a big, special, important live stream. I really hope that you guys can show up, and that's gonna be next weekend on Saturday, so that's May 6th. So basically this coming week's weekend. May 6th. You gotta be there, please. You do not want to miss this. But alright, I love everybody out there. Thank you for your support. I'll catch you on the next vid, and thanks for viewing.
Down the road of twists and turns, always anxious to see what's within. We can look ahead to the point of no return to the rest of our lives.